Guys, it's Jeremy here on Metal Music Meltdown, back with another video. We don't forget today, guys, is my next installment of my top 20 albums of each subgenre. If you're new to the channel, welcome. What I've been doing of this new series is kind of going subgenre by subgenre and picking my top 20 albums from all time. Definitely a difficult task, but I'm always up for the challenge. I've already tackled thrash metal was the first one I did, and then I went to death metal, and then last one I did was progressive metal. So definitely check out those ones if you haven't seen them already in my playlist. And the next one I decided to tackle was the mighty doom metal. Definitely one of my favorite subgenres of metal. Has that really heavy, kind of slow and dirgy kind of sound. Super heavy, but really epic sounding a lot of the times. And I incorporated some other, of course there's always going to be kind of a blending of different subgenres in here. So these won't be all straight up doom metal bands. There's going to be a couple death doom metal bands in here, some epic doom metal, some doom metal mixed with traditional metal, kind of things like that. Funeral doom, another one. So let's jump right in, guys. This was definitely a difficult task for the doom metal. There's about 10 albums that came to my mind right away that are just epics in my mind. And a lot of these probably won't be any surprise to you that they're on my list. They're considered all-time classics in the doom metal world. So a lot of these will probably be pretty obvious. There's a couple in here that might surprise you, or a couple bands you've never heard of even. They're kind of more deep cuts. Let's jump right in, guys. So number 20, I went with a newer band, Pallbearer, new generation doom metal bands. This is their debut album I selected, Sorrow and Extinction. I think it's my favorite from the band overall. It was released in 2012. These guys are just a straight up doom metal band, really carry the sound really well. And like I said, this has always been my favorite album by them. Foreigner is a really good tune. The Legend, Given to the Grave, just some really good tunes on this one. And it's a band I've been starting to follow lately, and I've really dug their sound. I think they do a really good job. At number 19, I went with the second studio album from British doom metal band Cathedral. This is a band that came to my mind right away when it comes to doom metal. These guys do it really well. They're kind of a blend of like traditional doom metal with some good heavy metal, traditional metal elements mixed in. And I went with their second album, The Ethereal Mirror. Really cool album cover on this one. Just some really good guitar work on this album is crazy. And Ride is a really good tune. Enter the Worms. Midnight Mountain is a killer track. Let me see here. Grim Luxuria is a really good one as well. But the standard out track on this one is definitely Midnight Mountain and Ride. Those two songs are killer. If you're not familiar with this album, check out those two tracks. You'll love it. At number 18, I went with the second studio album from Swedish. Well, this is considered a death doom album, Brave Murder Day by Katatonia. And I love this band. They're not typically considered a straight out doom metal band, but their early material has a different sound to it. And the early one definitely has a death doom feel with some gothic elements mixed in. And of course, my boy Michael Eichelfeld from Opeth does some growl vocals on his albums. What's killer, does all the vocals. And I love this album, had to make my list. For the death doom realm, this album is killer. It was released in 1996, and it was like their second studio album, like I said. Really good stuff. At number 17, another band that instantly came to my mind when it came to doom metal. Epic doom metal band, debut album, Solitude Eternus, with their album Into the Depths of Sorrow. Really cool album cover on this one. Solitude Eternus is a really good epic doom metal band. One of the best from back in the day. This album came out in 1991, and if you're not familiar with these guys, definitely check them out. They have a really solid discography, and the debut's always been my favorite. The sophomore album's really killer as well, but the debut's probably my favorite. Next in line here, we got at number 16, we have Pentagram. Another all-time classic doom metal band, straight up doom, with their album Day of Reckoning. I showed the cover art that's more just the re-released version, but another killer album. Pentagram's an all-time classic band in the subgenre, and they have a lot of killer albums. The vocals are a little odd. The guy's a little wacky, but Really suits the music really well. Just really dirgy and slow. Love the sound of this band, but super heavy and crunchy. Really, really good band. If you're not familiar with these guys, definitely check them out. And like I said, definitely check out Day of Reckoning. In my opinion, their best album. Next one here we got is a really deep cut. It's an underground, super underground band called Black Hole with the album Land of Mystery. This is an Italian band. This was released in 1985. Really cool artwork, as you can see on this one. They're kind of hard to explain. They're like a doom metal band, but they also have progressive elements, and they really blend doom metal with, if you love like old 70s like Italian horror movies like Giallo and Fulci, and they have that really cool, almost like a soundtrack to a horror movie. It has that really eerie kind of vibe to it, like a horror movie mixed with doom elements. And then the vocals, the lead singer has a really strong inflection on his voice, like a strong Italian accent, so it kind of really adds to that horror kind of feeling to it. And really cool band. If you're not familiar with these guys, definitely check it out. It's a really cool sound. And like I said, they only have 3 albums in total. They had one in 1985, Land of Mystery, and then they were kind of disappeared for a long time. And then they released another album in the year 2000, and then 2017 is the most recent. But the debut by far is their best easily. Definitely check it out. Next in line here, we got Skald, a metal band from Russia. If you viewed my last album review, the video before this one, this is an odd story for a band. They had this one album come out in '97, and tragically the lead singer died within months of releasing the album in a train accident, and they kind of disappeared into obscurity for like decades. And then randomly this year, like 2 weeks ago, they have a new singer now, and they released their second album, which is the one I did the review for. And it kind of caught me off guard. And just by doing this exercise, putting this list together, is how I came to realize that they even had a new album. And it must have been fate, because it literally just came out 2 weeks ago on July 26th. So I must have been calling my name to review the new album. I was super pumped to see they had a new album. I didn't know that at all. I thought they were just one of those bands. It was a one and done, and just kind of fell into obscurity. But yeah, the debut I think is overall the better than the new one overall. But check out my review for sure. But the debut kicks so much ass. It's kind of like an underground classic doom metal album. If you know it, you know it. If you don't, you don't, kind of thing. But it's a killer, epic album. Really cool artwork on the reissue. I showed here on the side. And yeah, if you're not familiar with this band, definitely check them out. Super epic doom metal kind of Candlemass worship and the soaring vocals over the top. Really good band. Love their new album too. Really solid. Next we got Death Penalty by the British death metal or heavy metal band Witchfinder General. This one I decided to put on my list because this album was very influential on doom metal to come. This was released in 1982. Really good blend of doom elements with traditional heavy metal. I think overall it definitely sounds more like a traditional heavy metal album, but they really have some of those really slow, dirgy doom elements that would become really influential to albums to come. And it just had to make my list. It's an all-time classic, and I fucking love this album. It's killer. Next in line, at number 12, I think it is, I have Sleep with Sleep's Holy Mountain. Really cool, more modern band, doom stoner band. And Matt Pike from High on Fire is in this band. And just a really good band. I love all their albums. And there's 2 on my list from these guys, spoiler alert. So a little bit further down, I have their album, Sleep's Holy Mountain. Just a really good stoner doom metal, really sludgy, kind of a thick sounding album. Really dense, kind of like High on Fire in that way. They have that similar kind of sound, but just a little bit more on the doom side. Really cool album cover on this one. Standard tracks would be Dragonaut is good, The Druid is really good, Aquarian is really killer, Holy Mountain, the title track, is killer. Again, if you're not familiar with this album, please check it out. You'll love it. Next we got another band that came to my mind as soon as I thought of doom metal. It's the classic doom band Trouble with it's their debut album as well. Really cool artwork on this one. It's always been my favorite artwork from them too, and always my favorite album by this band. They have a really unique sounding vocalist on this one. Very, you can tell it as soon as you hear him. But really cool album. Love the doom elements in this one. Standout tracks would be Assassin's really good. The Tempter's really cool. Bastards will pay. Victim of the Insane. Just some really good tunes on this one. Song's a little bit shorter, but they hit to the point and get in and get out and do what they got to do. If you're not familiar with this Trouble album, please check it out. It's an all-time doom classic, and it had to make my list. Next we got here is a newer band, Hooded Menace. This is a band I've got into more recently. I think their most recent album, when was it come out? 2021 was my introduction to the band. I never heard of them before that. And I went back and listened to all their stuff, and yeah, they're just a killer band. They're like a death doom band, but they're not super crazy aggressive. They still have some like a lot of melody and like groove in their music. They're from Finland, and the album I went with was Never Cross the Dead, and that was their sophomore album from 2010. This has been always the standard album for me, and it might be one of the best albums released in the last like 20 years. It's probably one of my favorite albums released in the last 20 years. It's really good. Yeah, if you haven't checked these guys out, please do so. You won't be disappointed. Like I said, really good death doom band, and all their albums are killer, and it's definitely a band I need to pick up their material, but I'm glad I ran into them because they're killer. Next we got here is another all-time classic doom metal band, St. Vitus, with their third studio album, Born Too Late. This has always been my favorite St. Vitus album. They do have a lot of killer albums. Their debut, self-titled, is really good. That's another one that kind of I thought about. Their most recent album wasn't quite as good as their older stuff, but it's pretty decent still. Another band to only have a couple of their albums, but I definitely want to pick up the whole discography over time. But if you're not familiar with these guys, one of the most classic doom metal bands of all time, St. Vitus. Really cool sound, really dirgy, kind of really relying on that bass line, like the drums and the bass, and really cool vocals on these guys as well. Definitely check out Born Too Late. Always been my favorite from the band. Next we got, at number 3, 4, 5, 6, I think so, 8, we have the Other Sleep album, Dope Smoker. Most people know this album. It's an all-time classic. It's one song. I think it's like 82 minutes in length. Cool album cover on this one, really iconic, and just takes you on a journey. It's like a stoner doom metal album, very slow pace, but I don't know, you have to really listen to it to explain. It's one of those albums you kind of put on and just absorb. Really good headphones album as well, but really fun stuff. Easily my favorite sleep album, an all-time classic, and one album that instantly came to my mind when it came to doom metal that had to make my list near the top 10. So if you're not familiar with these guys or this album, please check it out. Set aside over an hour to do so, but you won't be disappointed. You'll love the experience. Next we got a newest album from a band I recently got into, and I love their newest album, so I made my list. Asphyx, or Necrosaurus, I'm not sure how to say it. Really good death doom metal band. I heard some of their older stuff in passing, but the new album just really kicked my ass, and it was, I think, number 2 on my year-end list for that year. It was number 1. It was what year was it? 2021. Yeah, it was my number 1 album of 2021. Really killer album. Some really straight up doom metal songs on here, and then some other songs that are kind of a blend of death doom, and they even have a lot of melody in some of their songs. What was it called? 3 Years of Famine, I think it was. That had midway through the song, it just has this really crazy good melodic part. But good variety on this album. I was really blown away by how good this album sounded. Really good vocalist as well. And if you're not familiar with the new Asphyx album, please check it out. It's a masterpiece. I love it. At number 6, I have Electric Wizard with Dope Throne, the third studio album by this great British metal band. They're a mix of, again, stoner, doom. Seems to be a trend with doom metal. It kind of blends with stoner rock a lot, just that sound kind of blends together. But everyone knows Electric Wizard. This is an all-time classic doom out record that had to make the list. So these are kind of the albums that were kind of predictable, that would probably kind of show up at one point. In terms of track listing, Weird Tales is a really cool one. Barbarian, The Witchfinder Eye was really good. We Hate You, just some really good tunes on this one. And another one that I need to buy a hard copy of, but really strong album and an all-time classic. And we're into the top 5 here, guys. These are what I considered really top tier stuff. The first one I got here for number 5 is the debut album from Swedish death metal legends, Candlemass. Probably my all-time favorite doom metal band, to be honest, outside of Sabbath, of course, that kind of started it all. But I love Candlemass, love all their albums. Really strong vocalists in this band. And Epicus Dubicus Metallicus, their debut, is just an all-time classic, and it's just such a big sounding album for its time. For considering it was from 1986, it doesn't sound raw or whatever at all. It's very powerful, very big production on this album. Sounds modern. It sounds like it could have been released like last week. It's just a really strong album. A lot of people cite it as their best, but for me, it's not quite their best. You'll see the other one coming up momentarily. At number 4, Black Sabbath, Master of Reality. Had to include the original guys in here. This is the first doom metal album of all time, in my opinion. This is what started it all. Their first 2 albums had elements of doom in it as well, but Master of Reality is just a balls-out doom record, and it's just heavy metal, and they really brought in those doom elements, a really slower pace, really crunchy riffs, and yeah, this is where it started it all, and it just had to make my list for this subgenre. And with songs like Sweet Leaf, Children of the Grave, Solitude, Into the Void, killer album, one of my favorite Black Sabbath albums of all time, and definitely one of my favorite doom metal albums. At number 3, I went with the funeral doom band Bell Witch with Mirror Reaper. Another album that's just one crazy long song. Good God, this album kicks so much ass. One of my favorite album covers of all time. It's just so eerie looking, and it's hard to explain, but this is a really killer album, like really good. This is definitely a headphones album as well, similar to Dope Smoker. If you want an experience where it's super slow and dirgy, really slow paced, but kind of beautiful and epic at the same time. Amazing record. I finally found a place online that has this on CD for like a really good price, like $13. So I'm like waiting to make an order to finally pick up this album on hard copy. But I've always been one of my favorite albums. It was released in 2017. Another album that's probably one of my top 20 favorite albums of the millennia, like after 2000. It's definitely my top 10 albums of the new millennia for sure. Killer album. Definitely check it out, guys. At number 2, another one of my favorite bands from the modern era with their second studio album from Chemist called Hunted. Fucking love Chemist. They're probably my favorite new era doom metal. I like them more than like Electric Wizard even, or Pallbearer, or what's another newer band? Sleep even. Chemist is probably my favorite modern doom metal band. Love all their albums, but the Hunted is just something really special. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. And the song, the title track, Hunted, 13.5-minute epic. If you're not familiar with this band, guys, listen to Hunted, the song Hunted. It'll blow your mind. It's one of the best metal songs of all ever written. And I just love this fucking album. It's so, so good. The whole discography is killer, but this album specifically is a masterpiece. And number 1, guys, it's always been my number 1 doom metal album of all time, Candlemass with Nightfall. Guys, it doesn't get better than this. Perfect epic doom metal album. One of the best artworks in all of metal. I definitely want to get a flag of this album behind me at one point. I know there's a company in Canada over in BC that sells really cool like flags, and they have this one, so I want to pick it up. But yeah, always been my favorite doom metal album of all time, and a top 10 album of all time for me in general. This was an easy number one for me, no brainer. Instantly was number one when tackling this list. And it's always been my favorite Candlemass album, my favorite doom metal album, and like I said, top 10 album of all time across metal in general. So that's my list, guys. Let me know down below what your list would comprise of, if there's any bands I might have missed. There's definitely some other deep cuts in here I mentioned that you guys should definitely check out. Like the Scald band is really good, or Black Hole, definitely check those guys out. A lot of my albums on my list are pretty obvious, like the Candlemass, Pentagram, Saint Vitus, Sleep, like a lot of those bands, Electric Wizard. You know, a lot of those are pretty obvious picks, but they're still iconic albums. They just had to make my list. So thanks for watching, guys. Let me know down below what your picks for doom metal would be. I'm really interested to see what you guys pick, because doom metal is definitely one I'm into a lot, but I do stick to a lot of the kind of traditional, well-known albums. So I'm really excited to check out some new bands that you guys might suggest, or some albums maybe I'm not familiar with. So let me know down below also what subgenre I should tackle next. Should I do power metal, maybe melodic death metal, traditional metal, new wave of British heavy metal? Let me know down below, guys, what I should do next. And until next time, guys, keep it metal.